Hey, truth seekers, welcome back. Zach here. It's March 6th, 2017, a Monday. The big news story today: the Trump administration has issued travel ban 2.0. This follows the first travel ban that they announced January 27th, 2017. Both travel bans introduced with executive orders by the president. These travel bans come 39 days apart from each other, and the reason that's interesting is because the word security in Gematria sums to 39, so does the word travel. And the Trump administration, their statement today said they did this in the name of security. So 39 days after the first travel ban, a bill banning travel in the name of security. You see? And in case you're not familiar with Gematria, very relevant language. I have been proving for more than 3 years that everyday news stories are constructed by the numbers, proving that they're part of an ongoing planned agenda. In other words, the news you read about each day is not organic, including today's news, part of a planned agenda by the numbers that goes back to the history of the country. I want you to notice that Iraq in Gematria sums to 45. In reverse ordinal, Iraq sums to 63, kind of like 6/3 for March 6th, the day on the calendar year we are. It's also the 45th day of the Trump administration, and he's the 45th president. We're going to talk more about that, the significance of 45 to the Middle East and the world wars. There's a lot in these numbers right here. This is news by the numbers. Iraq, a feature of the story because they're not part of Travel Ban 2.0. January 27th, 7 countries were banned. Today, just 6 countries are banned. Iraq, the exemption. Real quick, on that note, I want to take a moment to watch this clip. This is Wesley Clark, who ran for president in 2004 under the Democratic ticket. A lot of people thought he was going to be the man to go against Bush and he would crush Bush. But then John Kerry snuck in there. And then it was John Kerry, the Swift boats, Bush won re-election. Remember, Bush and Kerry were both members of Skull and Bones. Anyway, this is Wesley Clark, former military man, NATO commander, candidate for president. He did this interview with Democracy Now!, Amy Goodman. I forget what year this was in. This was uploaded 2011. I feel like this came out way before 2011, though. Okay, published March 2007. That sounds about right, because I remember when this was breaking news in the alternative news circle. But listen to what Wesley Clark says here. He talks about a memo with 7 nations we intend to go to war with, and they're the exact 7 nations that Donald Trump banned 9 years later, or 10 years later, to start 2017. So check this out. This is Wesley Clark.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me. And one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today," and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
So, you know what? I think there's a small distinction. He didn't have Yemen on the list. Yemen's part of the ban. But very close, very related, almost the exact same nations. And that's from 10 years earlier. So I'll link this video if you want to watch it later. But there's Wesley Clark, military commander, kind of showing you how the aftermath of Iraq and going to war, or not with Iraq, the aftermath of September 11th and going to war with Iraq, they understood it was nonsensical. See, we're living out a nonsensical agenda that everyone should be aware of. Ever since 9/11, the news has been nothing but nonsense. On 9/11, it was all bogus lies. Buildings coming down, like controlled demolition, being blamed on a man in a cave, telling you they couldn't find the bodies or the major parts of the plane that you would expect, but they recovered terrorist passports, box cutter knives, cloth turbans, as they reported on 9/11. Being told that the hijackers are from Saudi Arabia and a film crew was over from Israel to document the attack, our allies. We didn't go to war with them. We went to countries that had no relation, like Wesley Clark just explained. The news is always nonsensical. And even today's news, this travel ban 2.0 is nonsensical because it's been explained to us by our own media, our own government, our own CIA, that because we went to war with Iraq after 9/11, we destabilized the country, we destabilized the region, and we created a lot more terrorism in Iraq, Syria, and its neighbors. They say Iraq's one of the biggest hotbeds of terrorist recruitment. And today, Donald Trump says this travel ban's about stopping terrorists from coming. So let's just assume that all of this bogus narrative is true. If it's true, it doesn't make any sense. Because you shouldn't be letting the people from Iraq come if that's the hotbed of terrorist recruiting. Now, I don't support any of this. I see that it's all propaganda. I'm just saying, using their logic, their news is nonsensical again. Their news is always nonsensical. It's meant to be, and it's always by the numbers. Just want to show you the words security, which in reduction sums to 39. 39, also 120. They said that Syria refugees are no longer indefinitely banned. They're banned for the next 120 days in the name of security. You see? Travel also has that gematria of 39. So with regards to 39, 39 has a lot to do with laws. This is about an executive order, the president using his legal privilege. On June 8th, 1789, James Madison made 39 proposals on a date with 39 numerology that became the 10 Bill of Rights. That was also a date with 120 numerology. Same numbers we see today. Travel bans 39 days apart, 120 used deliberately in the story. The Syria refugee ban will end in 120 days. I'll link, or we'll go over the reporting in just a moment. But look at this. The name Madison in gematria sums to 39. So does MSG for Madison Square Garden, in New York. Everything in New York's coded 39. The United Nations is 39 floors tall. The date of establishment for New York. So many things in New York, 39. When you write out 10 as a word, it also sums to 39. The 39 proposals that James Madison made on the date with 39 numerology became the 10 Bill of Rights. And 10 has the gematria of 39. Think of the story of 10 commandments from God from the 39 books of the Old Testament. 10 and 39. Again, from the beginning of the nation up to the present, everything has been done by the numbers. July 4th, 1776 is not an arbitrary date. It's a very specific date. There's a reason the nation began on that date, something I've covered in a number of videos. See my work on the 4th of July. So again, travel ban 2.0 today, March 6, 6/3. A lot like 63, Iraq equals 63, reverse ordinal, 45 ordinal. It's been 45 days since Trump took office. Inauguration day, January 20th. The first travel ban was January 27th, 2017, date with 45 numerology. In regards to Trump being the 45th president, Holy Bible has gematria of 45, so does Mike Pence. The Holy Bible ends with Revelation, the book of prophecy, where the name Philadelphia comes from, the original name of the capital, or the city name Philadelphia before it was Washington, D.C. Revelation ends with warnings that are trumpets, sounding a lot like Trumpence, the name of the Donald Trump presidential ticket. From January 27th to today, a span of 39 days, travel and security 39. Today's date, also a date with 46 and 19 numerology. Chaos has gematria of 19 and 46. The word ban has gematria of 19, a second ban. Let's just read the opening reporting. President Donald Trump signed a new executive order Monday banning immigration from 6 Muslim-majority countries, notably dropping Iraq from January's previous order. The new travel ban comes 6 weeks after Trump's original executive order was rolled out to chaos and confusion at airports nationwide and eventually blocked by a federal court. The new version exempts people who hold current visas and drops an indefinite ban on Syrian refugees, reducing it to 120 days, our other number for security. So remember, the last time there was a travel ban, the day after, the news was the burning of the mosque in Victoria, Texas, called the Islamic Center of Victoria, having the same gematria as President of the United States, which matches Trump card, Donald Trump in the time of House of Cards, not a coincidence, predictive programming. House of Cards is a hit TV show about the White House. The day Donald Trump issued the original ban, Friday, January 27th, was Holocaust Remembrance Day. I've been saying since 9/11, I said, I see now how, a Nazi power structure could come to be. A group of people committed to hating one group of people. I saw it all right after 9/11. Propaganda staged, blamed on Muslims, clearly carried out by the Zionist Jewish Masonic media. And of course, the Nazis and Hitler were all part of the war banking tyranny machine. Ask yourself, were Germany a completely broke nation because of what happened to them at the end of World War I with the reparations? How do they raise the most powerful military? They don't without banker investment. Bankers always control all sides of all wars. And with regards to World War, the World War ended in 45. The Middle East was carved up out of the World Wars. We're going to talk about 45 and the Middle East a little bit more in a second. But real quick, just notice the gematria of World War. 114, like Pearl Harbor, like Holocaust, like Winston, as in Winston Churchill, the face of the war. As in Winston, the main character of 1984, which was published right after World War II. Book about nations always at war, but the people don't know why. That's what they want. Divide and conquer. The next world war will be Christianity versus Islam. So I have an older video on this, a whole lot coded into this mosque story. I'll link the blog post. Victorian Civil War share gematria, plus where this mosque burned on the 97th meridian. 97, the 25th prime, bringing us back to Trump. This was the news the day after the last Muslim ban. We'll see what happens this time around. Remember, it was first coined the Muslim ban, then the travel ban. There was this headline right after the travel ban, Iraqis sue. Maybe some predictive programming. I pointed out then how they coded 138 in the headline. They're always coding 138 in Donald Trump headlines. Donald Trump equals 138, so does federal. Whoops, that's not what slide I wanted. Anyway, go to gematrinator.com, type in Donald Trump, type in federal. You'll see how that number connects. Trump's been using that, which has gematria of 88 connecting to Trump, the Republican Party. Remember also, after the first travel ban, Trump had to fire his, what's the word I'm looking for? His temporary attorney general. He had to fire her because she stood against the travel ban. He didn't have Jeff Sessions sworn in. Today, Jeff Sessions advocating for the travel ban. He had to fire this woman who was against it. She said it was unconstitutional. Donald Trump, you're fired. And then, of course, what happened is the federal court in Seattle stopped Donald Trump's travel ban. They said it was unconstitutional. The headlines that day, 77, 239. Trump just got checked. D.C. on the 77th meridian, 239, the 52nd prime number. White House government prophecy, all having gematria 52. The Pope's visit to the U.S., very much connected to the election. We have the first Jesuit Pope. We have Jesuit President Donald Trump. Since making this blog post, we learned about reverse ordinal gematria, and we learned that president in reverse is also 52, not by coincidence. Notice the reflection between president and White House and government, and things like Washington, D.C., 187, and George Washington, 187. Donald Trump, his GOP convention began 18/7, 187 days before taking the White House on Inauguration Day. News by the numbers. Some other headlines about Trump and his travel ban, about how they may come back to haunt him. They quoted a 138 in that headline as well. Eventually there's going to be some narrative about why Donald Trump's presidential administration is coming to an early end. Scandal with Russia, overstepping, constitutional rights, lying, being found to be incompetent, not mentally stable. They're floating all these things, foreshadowing assassinations. This Trump thing, it's going somewhere. And what the New World Order will do with Trump is say, see, people, you guys got too crazy with Donald. You need to stick more to the norm, our groomed politicians within the system, not some wild businessman. It's all part of the agenda. They want everyone to stay on the conveyor belt. They want people to be apathetic. They want people to stop caring, check out, tune out. That's what it's all about. They did that with Obama. I told people they were going to do that with Obama before he was even the president. I said he's going to get everyone's hope in and crush it, and then who knows what they'll do with the transition. Well, now we know. We got the orange Oompa Loompa. Oh, yes. And last point, the Arab League. The Arab League was created just after World War II. It was the governorship for the territories newly carved up after the world wars in the Middle East. Like a smaller government for the Middle East. They called it the Arab League. Look at what date they established it. March 22nd in the year 45. 322 or 22/3. 223, the number of masonry. Very important number to the Bible, too. And again, the Middle East, the biblical lands. They say the first published Bible was March 22nd. Once upon a time. All right, Truth Seeker. I'll link all this information below down in the description. Covered a lot there, Truth Seeker. All right, until next time.